All right, here we are.
Hey.
We're back. Another episode with another really good friend, Gary Kibel from Davis and Gilbert. What a guy.
The best.
Yeah.
One of the organically non douchebag lawyers from a firm, right? I was trying to find a nicer word, but he's just a nice guy. And it's not fake, it's not business development, it's none of that garbage. He's just a good person.
He's just a friend, and happens to be we happen to be lucky to have a friend that sharp and that experience. And we learned that he had this IT background, which we were not aware of, which makes sense. He's a pretty technical guy. So
he is, man. And I know we're gonna talk about it later, but he does understand the inner workings of programmatic. He understands the inner workings of that AdTech ecosystem. He just does. And there are so many posers out there. Even now, man. I feel like there's lots of people who know things, and that's for sure. The expertise has risen, across the board. But even now, he's far and away ahead of a lot of his especially outside counsel counterparts. He's deep. We've had Elisa on before, right? She's probably the other outside counsel that I think of, and I'm they're up there. I'm depth.
My thing that I always say about Gary is he was one of my outside counsel at a time when we had a data incident, small data incident, and you need people you trust like that.
Right.
And so he was my phone call, and he's your friend, so he immediately puts you at ease. We got this. We're going to help you figure this out. It's complicated, and you're going to need all hands on deck to solve this for a little while, but here we go. And the playbook, he just runs the playbook. And it takes your, as the lawyer, in my situation of a small company, it takes the heat down. It turns that pressure knob down to know that you've got someone who's we're here to help you.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, man. He's a cool cat. I've never seen him ruffled, even in some hard times. So he knows what he's doing. And I'll give one more shout out for something that he does that's actually free. We all subscribe to law firm newsletters, right? Of course. Shout out to the Davis and Gilbert Gary client alert. It's good. And every time his client alert pulls up on my stupid inbox, it's one of the few emails that I don't auto ignore or just archive. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, you should.
That's a good call out. It's one of the only ones I read.
For sure.
Well, they do a good job of keeping it tight, and they are always one of the first firms to release a take on something, and they always kind of have a take. They don't go too far, and they don't wax poetic about how they feel about something, but they always kind of have an angle, and they give you the nuts and bolts fast.
Yeah, and because they're an advertising firm, if you're an advertising, if you're in ads like I am or you have been, it's relevant. But even if you're not, it's still pretty good.
Pretty good. No, they're on it. They're all over it, and it's cool the way that firm has adjusted and adapted over 100 years of being around. So
I like how your curtains kind of match your pillows back there. The whole thing, man.
Hey, there it is.
I like it.
All right, here's Gary.
All right.
Here we are.
All right, we're here.
All right, we're here. Here we are.
We are a Zoom cocktail party. Where is everybody?
We're in a Corona cocktail party over Zoom here.
We're in a brave new world, man. New administration, all kinds of stuff going. Andy's in a new location. He doesn't have some weird background. I'm shocked. Gary's got Hollywood lighting down there. This is real, man.
Exactly. Food tastes better in the past 2 days. The air is fresher. Feels good.
It's amazing what can happen when adults take over.
That's right.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. The only thing it's bad for is Saturday Night Live. What are they going to do now? It's just pretty boring for them now.
I'll take
There's
it.
always something. There's always something. So I think we'll find some
So
gems.
two things quickly. Pedro's t-shirt. Gary, first of all, this is Gary Kibel, our good friend, who we've known. There it is. Yeah. So this is our favorite Instagram handle. And Gary, do you live in New Jersey?
I live in New York, in Chappaqua, in
Okay.
Westchester.
All right. Well, you're close enough. This guy reviews restaurants all over New Jersey. It's the best Instagram page ever.
Oh, by
It's so great. So check it out. Just another food review page. And he always opens every episode with, "All right, we're here." You know, that's his t-shirt.
So is this a paid sponsorship? Do we have to disclose that?
No, man. No, we're trying to look. We support small businesses. His page is all about small businesses and restaurants. And honestly, he's funny. He's witty. I think it's good. I think it's good. So
you're great. Anyway, we are here. Here we are with our good friend Gary, who we've known at this point a long time. So we're pumped to have you on season 2 of our endeavor here. It's been super fun for us just to talk to our friends, to be honest. But it's also been really fun to create content, and kind of like our goal is to make this privacy stuff normal and accessible instead of just lawyers chatting. We try to be lawyers chatting, but more open and comfortable about it. So let's get into it. I got introduced to you from our mutual friend, Ed Montez, who was the chief revenue officer at DataZoo. He was like, "Listen, I know we've got a lot of privacy issues at this company. This guy, Gary, has been really helpful to me in the past. And no doubt you were helpful a ton at DataZoo, especially for me as a guy learning AdTech. I learned so much from the first few conversations, and then seeing you at events and things, and then just becoming friends. It ups the ante for that, for sure. And you've been a big supporter of Pedro, and I like pulled colleagues into a group, and you've been a big supporter of our group, and kind of just willing to always bat stuff around with us, which is, it's so necessary because this stuff is so hard and so complex that having friends like it is good, and is great.
No, I appreciate that.
Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I met you at a conference in New York City where I think we were on the same panel, but we met in person. Am I wrong? Is that where we met?
It might have been in New York at maybe a local IAPP Knowledge Net or some other industry conference, or maybe it was at one of the bigger IAPPs in DC or on the West Coast.
Well, the memory that sticks out to me as the furthest, and maybe it's just the wrong one, but I spoke on some panel, and I know Gary was there because I remember I was losing my voice, and I was like, I was sick, like I had just gotten over a cold, and how like sometimes after the cold is when you lose your voice, and so I was like super raspy guy, and like I'm usually very energetic on these panels, and I was like a dead corpse, and Gary just held it down, man. Like I remember that vividly, and I thought, oh, this guy's all right. I'll say one more thing too about like the point Andy made. Back in the days when 10 years ago, whatever it is. There are a lot of lawyers at law firms that said they knew about AdTech and would charge a lot of money about AdTech-y stuff, and they didn't know shit. You have always known your stuff. You've always, like, you are an actual thought leader. You're not just like a law firm, like newsletter thought leader. And like Andy said, like, been invaluable in our groups, our industry group and all of our panels, like, collaborating with you has been like a super highlight for me because you actually know what you're talking about all the time.
Totally.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I have a tech background. Before I was a lawyer, I was an IT guy, and I did network administration and support services in an investment bank. So I was in server rooms late at night, trying to figure out the blue screen of death and what was going on. And so I've never felt that frustration as a lawyer that I felt as an IT guy, in a server room at 2 a.m. and you can't get something to work properly. But yeah, I think that background helps, because when everyone's talking about ad tech and data and where it's moving and where it's going, I'm thinking about the servers, the devices, the network connections, and where things are actually moving in the electronic and physical world.
Well, if that's the case, then hold on, Andy, because this is important. Can you explain programmatic advertising in 60 seconds?
60 seconds,
man. Forget that.
Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
He's done it a million times. I've seen him do it. What I wanted to get to is like completely related to this is you are a partner at Davis and Gilbert, which is one of, if not the, major advertising law firm representing holding companies and advertising for a long time. So for years and years. And so I'm really interested to know, as the former IT guy and the guy kind of like holding down a lot of the ad tech, as that stuff is rising up and coming up in advertising, it wasn't always that way. The internet was a disruptor and was new for advertising. So I'm curious how you built the law practice there, got so familiar on the technology and was able to do that inside of a law firm that I think historically maybe had been pretty like hardcore advertising focused as opposed to tech focused. How did you do that?
Yeah, it was just the perfect timing when everything came together. So like I said, I had the IT background. I was at a different law firm where I was doing technology work and IP work, but nothing involved in the advertising and the internet world. And then I came to Davis and Gilbert in 2001, which is kind of the Stone Age of the ad tech world. And when I walked into the office, sitting on my desk was some agreement to do some telematics work and some things with like in-car services and some video on demand services, and also working with IAB 2.0 terms because we represented the IAB. So it was really just a perfect time when things started to come together. And the privacy conversation at that point in 2001 was a side issue. People weren't even focused on that. And as time went on, over 2002, 2003, I started to raise questions, say, hey, I think we need to focus on the data. Hold on a second. My dog is barking because my dog loves privacy. Here, go take that bone. There you go.
Look at this. Look at this situation back here. Look at that thing back there. He's
there
quiet,
you go.
man.
You're very smart.
No, you should see him on other episodes.
That's not Gary's dog. That's actually Johnny Ryan.
I didn't say
yes.
Shout out to him. He's doing his thing.
I'll call my dog Max Schrems. Max, cut it out. Come on. Yeah. You guys had to record me. You had to record me at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Dinner time here for the dog is 5 o'clock, and she goes insane. But anyway, going back to the Stone Age, I was the one starting to interject into conversations. Hey, maybe we should talk about the data and who's got the rights to the data and what are we telling the consumer about the data collection. And it was so new to people back then in 01, 02, 03. But as time went on, then everyone started to ask those questions.
Yeah.
I can't believe you got to the firm in 01 and we're talking telematics. In 2000, when did I start at the firm? Like 2013 or 12? I don't remember. My first assignment from the partner in like the tech, whatever, was like the emergence of telematics. And so this is proof that Gary lives in the future, okay? 12 years earlier, Gary was writing the same freaking memo I was, probably way back. That's awesome, man.
Well, so then Gary, like from the telematics memo, how did you like what clients helped you bridge the gap? Because there's got to be some clients that like were forward thinking enough that helped you, because you had to learn it at some point, right?
Yeah. So, in going back before Davis and Gilbert, like in 1999 and 2000, everybody was putting .com at the end of their company name. And then there was the .com crash, but people were starting to think about how to get into that business. And so when I went to Davis and Gilbert, this is a firm that's been dominant in the advertising and marketing industry for 100 years. And we always like to say that we've represented old media when it was new media. And so as things advance in the industry, our clients are kind of always at the forefront. So the digital world came out of the traditional advertising world. People were leaving traditional advertising agencies and going to start digital shops. So we had those personal relationships with people. And when they went and started these new ventures, they said, hey, the Davis and Gilbert guys know a lot about advertising and interacting with consumers and how to deal with consumer-facing issues and disclosures. We should probably deal with them on these ad tech issues. So we were fortunate to kind of be there at the beginning when things were being developed. I mean, hey, when the IAB was first formed, we incorporated the IAB. We filed the papers to bring the IAB into existence because, again, it was folks from the advertising world that were the ones who were the trendsetters in ad tech.
But that shows that Davis and Gilbert, it can actually, for a 100-year-old firm, that shows that they can think differently. There's so many 100-year-old law firms that don't adjust and don't pivot with the time and don't see the rising tide very well. They would just be like, still, they wouldn't represent a small upstart digital agency. They'd say, where's our $25,000 retainer? And that digital agency would say, what are you kidding? So like, shout out to Davis and Gilbert for like understanding how you have to move.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that way. I've been there for 20 years, and it's been that way the entire time, and it's still that way. We've got to adapt now because things are changing a lot, and there are so many new types of services and new legal issues to face. And what makes it very fun and exciting is a lot of times there's not a lot of precedent. So we have to interpret practices in light of current legal requirements, maybe self-regulatory industry trends, and come up with the right model to make things work.
When were you in IT, Gary?
So I worked at an investment bank. You're going to realize how old I am now, even though I haven't gone gray yet. I worked at Merrill Lynch in the investment banking department doing IT work from 1991 until 1999.
I was hoping for the 80s so badly when I asked that question. I was just hoping. I just wanted to know what you wore in 88. Yeah. What was your hair like in the 80s, man? What like,
oh,
talk
man.
about your hair.
Oh, yeah. I had a fro, kind of a wide collar, I had a couple of eyes on, we got these photos if you want to see them. They're out there.
I think we should. I really think we should.
Yeah, Gary, I didn't know you had this IT background. It makes sense now, like your understanding of like complex information systems. Now I totally get that, but like I can't imagine what it was like in like 93 or whatever, calling IT and like Gary's on the other line. I'm just
And let me tell you, we talked about the stone age of ad tech. I mean, I was working in IT in the stone age of IT. No joke. I dealt with maybe sometimes having to send an Excel file from New York to Brazil. And when the internet was so new, like right now, you attach a file, you click send. That's about a 5-6 second project. When I had to transfer an Excel file from New York to Brazil, that was about a 3 or 4 hour project. Because firstly, I'd get the phone number of the IT guy in Brazil. We get on the phone and start saying, all right, what type of modem do you have? I'm like, well, I'm doing a 14.4, but I'm going to go with, my protocol is going to be 8N1. All right, why don't I try to send you like, a 1K file. Let's see if that works. Okay, let's hang that up. And we would test that out. I mean, this took like hours to send a file. So it never ceases to amaze me these days about how far we've come from where we were back from technology back then.
You look at that process you just described and you think about it. The Grand Canyon between those things is unbelievable. At DataZoo, we had screens on the walls showing transactions per second.
I remember
processing transactions per second. And it's just mind-blowing. The numbers are mind-blowing how fast the system is processing transactions in real time. The comparison between those two things is unbelievable, truly.
Yeah, I mean, I was cleaning out some old boxes in my basement and I came across some floppy disks, and not the 3.5, like 5 1/4 floppy disks. And my 10-year-old son was looking at it and he's like, what is that? And I was explaining how we would stick this into the computer and I would store information on it. And I was explaining to him that said, all right, you got your iPhone here. I would need like millions of these floppy disks all around the house to store what this device can now store. I mean, there's just no equivalent whatsoever to what we can do now.
So before I forget this, I want to shift gears just a tiny bit and ask you if you have the same recollection of a particular memory that I do. which is
Okay.
in 2018, I joined Session M, and somehow I convinced them to let me go to the DAA summit in Napa. Like, the Digital Advertising Alliance had its annual conference, and they decided to have it in Napa. And Session M is not an ad tech company, and so I'm not quite sure how I managed to figure out. They asked me to speak, so that was cool, and I figured out how to. So we go out there, and I take this, like, have you guys seen the movie Sideways? This sort of,
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah.
me and Peter Kosmala in a rental car driving out to Napa together. A major shout out to Peter, who is one
Did
of
you
the
drink Merlot, Andy? Did you drink Merlot?
We did everything. We did everything. But we ended up the summit was the first day of the summit, and then that night, or maybe it was we arrived and a bunch of our crew decided to go out to dinner. It was typical situation where there's like a reservation for 5 and it ends up being 14 or 17
Yep.
people. Huge table. We're in Napa. We are just drinking wine and just ordering. There's like shellfish towers coming, and I'm thinking to myself, I just joined a startup. I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, like
You're getting fired.
it was Colin O'Malley. Colin O'Malley was the one ordering the shellfish towers, and so when I call him out on that right now, like, you know, he's ordering these amazing dishes. And he's got great taste, so I always let him order. But it's, you know, it starts to get expensive, and I'm looking around the table and I'm thinking to myself, like, who's gonna pick up this bill? Like, this bill, and because this is going to be $1,500 or more. I don't know. I'm looking around, like, huge dinner, and there's people from Facebook at the table. There's people from Google at the table. There's people from Verizon at the table, and
None of those people are paying. I promise you that much.
one outside counsel, Gary.
They're all looking at me, and I'm like,
I remember thinking to myself, "Is he going to pick this up?
I'm not a unicorn."
Is he going to pick this up?" And then I thought to myself, "He can't. There's no way. Like, this is too. Like, this is like even they will not take this bill." And I thought to myself that Google would pick it up, but no, we all split it, and I had to, like, go with my tail between my legs and explain this. It was like every person, I think it was $300. I think I like didn't eat the rest of the trip very much.
I don't know if I was thinking
the
straight.
dinner?
I mean, we had that dinner because, I remember that dinner because not that these conferences are boondoggles, but that afternoon I went to play golf with some guys from the DMA, and we were playing golf and drinking beers in the 90-degree heat all afternoon, and then did the dinner. But there were business conversations going on as well. So definitely worthwhile.
Tons. And the dinner was too expensive, but all of those things are valuable in a lot of ways. And without those conferences, I don't create the relationships that we need to get through big things. Like, so fun to joke about it, of course, but they were helpful. You know.
Oh no, it's very good. I mean, in today's day and age, really missing that interaction with people, going to conferences, seeing people, going to the social and networking events. We're going to get back there eventually, but it's going to take a little bit more time.
Does that influence business development as a partner in a law firm for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helps. Having those personal connections is a big part of it. You want people to not just hire you because you're smart or at the right law firm. You want people to hire you because they trust you, and you want to develop that personal relationship with the clients so that you get to know them on a personal level, and they feel comfortable having very frank conversations.
Yeah. Gary, you're a man of the future, as we have established. One of the things I'm starting to think about, and part of it is because I'm at Facebook, but just in general, is like the emergence of VR, right? Like all these virtual reality ecosystems, and whether or not ads is how does ads play into it is really the question. Advertising as a whole, digital advertising, obviously it's virtual. Do you have any thoughts on like how this might play out? Because that's the new greenfield, right?
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about VR, so let's up the game
nice.
here in terms of our technology base. See, you can do everything these days. Hey, these glasses could say Bud Light if someone had, paid for the sponsorship, So there's tons of things you can do. But look, but that's the beauty of the advertising industry, is that those working with cutting edge brands are always looking for what's new. So it was great. I could do radio spots, and then I could do out of home, and then I can do television, and then I can do internet and mobile and native and influencers and, in-game, in terms of video games. So everyone's trying to find where is that new opportunity. And I think they also realize that, the old days of segregating content and advertising is done. It's all going to merge together. So you really want to have those integrated ads and integrated experiences. And VR is part of it. I think there's a great way that, content and advertising can merge together. So I think lots and lots of brands are looking at it. Look, play any, major video game, and you'll see some branded content there. You're driving a car down the street and there's a billboard, and it will be for like a major beverage company, because everyone's trying to find where they can just get in front of people's eyeballs and get their message out there. So yeah, I think VR is a big part of where it's going. I don't have an Oculus, although my youngest keeps screaming for it all the time. So maybe I'll have to break down and get that eventually.
I need you to break down and get one of those, man. It's
Yeah.
actually really cool. I have never even used one until recently. It's actually way further along than I thought it was, and kind of how I imagined it. And the kids dig it, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. We got the cheap Google box that came like in the mail, and it was free. But yeah, I gotta step up my game here.
So I'm glad you mentioned video games, because I'm not a super gamer, but I do play like Forza, which is like a racing game on Xbox, and a couple other things. And you mentioned the billboard piece, and you're exactly right. Like, there's a lot of licensing happening in video games, advertising happening in video games, and it's dynamic. Like, because the games are played online now, like, it's not static. It's not like before you bought like a CD or a cassette, and whatever was on there was forever. Like, if Coca-Cola pays for a billboard in Forza, tomorrow it could be Pepsi, or it could be whatever. Like you can actually change it, which is much more like the real world, even though it hasn't like video games, well, at least like traditional video games haven't fully crossed into VR. Like, how do you sell ads on video? Like, how do you sell ads in VR? I know how you do it in AdTech. I know how you do it in like the linear, and physical world. How does that even work? Like,
Right. Well, it's data is driving everything. It's like, addressable TV, and same thing in video games, the same thing, on websites and in mobile, in that you're analyzing the data. Now, the question is, how rich is the data? If you're dealing with ads that are being served into the website, these days, the data is tremendously rich. Through the data that's been cookied and the offline online matching, you're able to get some incredible deterministic data. In other platforms, it's new. And so the data is not as rich. And some of those other platforms kind of keep themselves as a walled garden, so they're not sharing as much data. That's kind of the way things are in the OTT world a lot these days. But if you can get that data out, match it to other sources, and then push the ads back in, you can make them much more personalized. But maybe for now it's just general locations. So we'll serve ads for surfboards for those in Florida, and skis for those in Vermont. But eventually it's going to get much more personalized. And then we run up against the problem of privacy laws. That privacy laws are making some of that personalization harder. So we have that incredible tension between privacy, consumer privacy, and enabling all these great new technologies and startup businesses to monetize themselves through the data and advertising. And we're now dealing with a new administration. We're going to have a new FTC commissioner, chairman of the FTC, or chairwoman, and we want to make sure that we find that right balance, so that we respect consumers, we give them choice, we give them some control, but we don't kill this golden goose of ad-supported content and services, because it's been incredible what it's done for the American economy and the world economy, having ad-supported services.
Well, yes, agree on all counts. And I'll add, it's also incredible for allowing for premium content to make its way to groups of people who wouldn't have access to it otherwise because they can't pay for it, right? And
exactly.
Right? Yeah. So there's like the human.
Yeah. If everything's there's a socioeconomic issue too. If you make it so difficult to monetize the data, then to your point, Pedro, everything's going to become a paid service, subscription services. So it's only then available for people who can afford it. Right. No, you want to have ad-supported free services so that everyone can enjoy them.
Same page.
On the Xbox or the video game systems or OTT in general, is it the ads that are being served in those locations? I admittedly am removed from this, from OTT and from these things. Is the data widely available on every major supply platform? And if so, is it IP address based targeting, because those are often shared devices, or is the data richer than that? I don't know where things are at this point. I know lots of those systems have logged in profiles, but I'm sure they're not sharing them widely in terms of the richness of that data set totally outside of their own inventory.
Yeah, it's a real mix, because you have some providers that still have the mindset of, I don't want let anybody into my walled garden and suck out all this fantastic data that I have, because some of those providers have unbelievable data. I mean, the viewing data, I remember talking to a company 15 years ago, and they were collecting data from set-top boxes from cable providers. And they said, we don't need to know who the subscribers are. We can tell. We can tell that if somebody's watching cartoons at 3:30 in the afternoon, that's probably the kids, and that's probably the living room TV. And if they're watching an R-rated movie at 11 p.m. at night, that's probably the parents, and that's probably the bedroom. So, they were able to analyze that at that point. And some providers are scared that, people are going to suck out so much data and game their system and take the data elsewhere. So, in the perfect world, people will be sharing data. You could bring other data and onboard it into those platforms and do incredible targeting. But I don't think we're there yet, because I think companies are a little bit nervous about sharing all of that proprietary data. Like if I can draw an analogy to a completely different issue, like self-driving cars. I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was Department of Transportation put out some rules to allow the car companies to share data with one another, because they figured that's the ultimate goal, to have the cars speaking to each other and sharing data. But all the car companies right now are very, very nervous. They don't want to share data with other providers because they're worried about what it's going to mean to their own products.
Whatever happened with the Video Privacy Protection Act? Because you talking about that stuff made me think about this old law that came onto the books because of
talking about the porno law?
Justice Bork.
Justice Bork had a weird, it wasn't porno, but he just had his list of video rentals was accessed, and it wasn't. No, you're thinking of Clarence Thomas.
You're thinking of, there are many Supreme Court justices who have had problems. But yeah,
what I'm thinking of is the purpose of BIPA is so that people don't know that I watch sketchy movies. I mean, that's what it is.
Or anything. Or anything.
Right.
Or anything.
Yeah. Well,
really, it's not about
it's a perfect example of how challenging it is that you have these old laws on the books, but you got to apply them to new technology. And in the Video Privacy Protection Act, even though it was written back in the 1980s, it's still a law. It's on the books, and it's been interpreted very broadly about what is a video player and what data is covered under VPPA. And the way it came about is, again, concerns. Yes, it was during the hearings for Justice Bork. I think it was a reporter got access to his video rental history, and there was nothing surprising in it, nothing really offensive. But all the members of Congress were like, "What? People can get that information?" And the members of Congress were like, "I don't want anyone to see the videotapes that I've rented." And they passed the law really quickly.
This is about porn, man. If you're trying to convince me that those members of Congress weren't at Blockbuster Video and looking at that little curtained room in the back and saying, "I gotta go in there and see what's behind that curtain," you're lying to me and to the audience. This was about porn. But anyway.
So the OG
100%. 100%. They were going to the Blockbuster in DuPont Circle, putting on a mustache and walking in the back room. That's what it was.
The OG privacy law was the curtain.
The curtain was the privacy. Exactly.
There
like
you
the
go.
Curtain, like I remember being a teenager and asking or not a teenager, but like a little kid asking my dad what's back there. And he would always say something randomly ridiculous. Like that's where they gamble, like just crazy things. It turns out it's the porno room at the Blockbuster,
I love that he thought
Old school.
was a better choice.
Old school privacy controls work. Talk about old school privacy controls. Here's how I turn off my camera, right?
Me too.
That's how I turn off my camera.
Me too.
It works. It works.
And I just put it on.
I love that.
Well, Gary, I'll tell you this, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for how VR especially and ads are going to intersect. It's inevitable, right? Like we talk about Oculus and just accessibility. Obviously, part of that is making it inexpensive enough for people to use it. And so, and Oculus is obviously the homegrown stuff at my company, but just VR in general, we want it to scale. People have to be able to afford it. And I think advertising is going to supplement some of this cost. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but I just don't see how else we get this into the hands of everyone, right? And don't make it some exclusive thing. And so I'm totally aligned with you on the need to find whatever the balance is going to be to make that happen.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, before we did this, Andy asked me about one of my favorite songs. He said, what songs do you like? And so I said, Video Killed the Radio Star in the 1980s. Not just because I'm an 80s kid and I love it, and because I have nonstop 80s props around my house, but because I love a line from the song Video Killed the Radio Star. Firstly, that was the first video ever shown on MTV, and it was showing how technology was changing. And one of the lines of the song is, "We can't rewind, we've gone too far." And that's where we are, man. Everything is going to keep changing. We're not going back. We'll keep going forward. And, we have conversations like this 5 years from now, and we'll be telling, war stories about, 2021, what technology was like back then.
I think you're right.
That's a great way to wrap up, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for being with us. Always good to just see our friends. So we're glad to see you.
Always good to hang out, and looking forward to hanging out in person eventually.
We're always talking about that. We can't wait to see
Yep.
As cool as this is, and I'm glad Andy came up with the idea to do this and asked me to participate. I just want to hang out with my friends, man. I'm dying. It's suffocating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. All right, we'll do our little thing now, but so you can hang up.
All right. Hopping off. Taking care, guys. Bye-bye.